And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, and loving life. Want to remind everybody, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down in the details section for anybody who wants to share some love. Always appreciated. And of course, there's a StreamYard link for anybody who wants to join the chat, join the panel. And I want to thank Autumn for your donation today. Always appreciated. And we've got John with us today. How you doing tonight, John?
Doing good, Keith.
Good. Well, we did our first half of the birth certificate bond as an indemnification, and we're going to cover the second part. But before we get started, I want to go over a short little video of some breaking news out of Dolton, Illinois. So let's check it out. If you're familiar with Dolton, Illinois in the news here lately, we have a mayor, Tiffany Henyard, that is causing all kinds of uproar over there for quite a while now, and they're finally taking them down. Greetings, Russ. How you doing tonight?
Good. Good to be back. Good to see you, John.
Okay. Whoa, we gotta shut that down. There we go.
How you doing, Russ?
Okay, so let's take a look. Breaking news, FBI serves subpoenas at Dolton Village Hall. And if you remember in the birth certificate bond for indemnification, I spoke about notice to the FBI. And that's what we're talking about, folks. They're committing all kinds of securities frauds in every corner and all jurisdictions. And this is egregious acts against humanity. And this one here is a particular case that is just so profound. I cannot believe this woman was even allowed to remain in office as mayor of Dolton. What is it? Some kind of township. So let's take Dolton Village Hall.
First on WGN, we have breaking news from the south suburbs. WGN Investigates has confirmed the FBI right now is carrying out a raid of Dolton Village Hall. It comes after months of WGN Investigates reporting on questionable conduct by Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who also serves as the Thornton Township Supervisor. The FBI now confirming in a statement that the FBI was conducting court-authorized law enforcement activity in that area today. There is no further information available for release at this time. We understand from witnesses at the scene who were trying to conduct business at Dolton Village Hall today that they were turned away this afternoon when a group of plainclothes FBI agents at about 2:15 this afternoon entered Village Hall. We don't know what they're searching for or how long their search will take. We also don't know whether or not other court-authorized searches are taking place at other locations. We can tell you that Tiffany Henyard has been the focus of scrutiny for many months now for spending as well as transparency. You'll recall that a group of trustees opposed to Tiffany Henyard.
The spending is the securities fraud. Okay, she's spending without authorization certain public funds that are supposed to be securitized under full faith and credit.
Recently hired former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who's also a former federal prosecutor, to come in and investigate not only the village's finances, but other alleged transgressions. While we've been reporting on the questionable spending under Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, which include first-class travel, trips at the taxpayer's expense, meals, and more, we don't know what the FBI
tax fraud
investigation is focused on. But importantly and significantly, this FBI search happening right now at Dolton Village Hall comes just days after Tiffany Henyard's top aide in both Dolton and Thornton Township, Keith Freeman, was indicted on one count of bankruptcy fraud. That was largely seen as a move by federal investigators to go after problems with his own reporting of his income in his personal bankruptcy case, potentially to get him to cooperate in other investigations. We don't know if that's happening or not, but what we can tell you right now is the FBI confirming to WGN Investigates that its agents are at Dalton Village Hall this afternoon as part of a court-authorized search. We'll bring you more information just as soon as we get it.
And the thing is, Brother Keith, a lot of these other states or supposed alleged states, investigations are going through internally. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a big RICO coming, a big RICO.
Absolutely. That's what we're talking about when we talk about those bonds and everything. And that's everything has to be bonded. And that's an obligation or other security of the United States, telling us the obligation is secured. That's what the surety bond is for.
Anyone know
Right,
what
and
court it
that's all
was that
under
offered it?
18. Right, and that's all under 18 U.S. Code 8.
Yep. What do you got? What do you got, Russ?
Which court ordered that? I wonder. Do you know?
I have no idea. I imagine it was probably Chicago District Court, and that would be correlating with Lightfoot, who is the past mayor or current mayor, I'm not even sure yet, of Chicago itself. And Dalton and the township are both under that jurisdiction for territorial maritime contracts.
Right, I was unaware that Lori Lightfoot was an investigator until it was mentioned in the video. So I see why they were so harsh on her and, you know, in criticism, because she was doing internal investigations.
Yeah, she's a federal prosecutor. She was a federal prosecutor, and then she became a mayor of Chicago. So, and again, that goes to that endemic problem of people as such that are providing for corruption, but then when it comes to situations like this, they're going to step up to the plate and throw Tiffany Henyard under the bus because she doesn't want to be thrown under the bus. But she is still just as corrupt as the rest of them. So.
Well, that's where the like kind comes in when they investigate their own, right?
Yep, absolutely. And that's where we get the breach of contract, like I was speaking yesterday. When they breach their contract in relation to each other, that's breach of contract. When they breach their contract in regards to a beneficiary, then that's breach of trust as well. So here I've got pulled up as the next part of that slugs thing that we looked at on the previous stream, and this is from LIIWEX, unconscionability. A defense against the enforcement of a contract or portion of a contract. If a contract is unfair or oppressive to one party in a way that suggests abuses during its formation, a court may find it unconscionable and refuse to enforce it. A contract is most likely to be found unconscionable if both unfair bargaining and unfair substantive terms are shown. This is why we talk about the terms, the words. It's the language. An absence of meaningful choice by the disadvantaged party is often used to prove unfair bargaining. And this is what I'm talking about. They can't include the beneficiary in their contracts, yet that's what they're doing. And that is unfair substantive terms, providing which means there's a absence of meaningful choice to the disadvantaged party, which is the third party beneficiary. It's the two original contractors that are subject to the contract, and when they go extrajudicial or extraterritorial beyond those limits, that's an affront against both what's known as the grantor and beneficiary or benefactor. Again, in equity, the beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner. So they're actually violating the very people that they're supposed to be serving under those contracts. And that's a violation of the trust. And it says, see contracts. It's the only venue it applies to, contracts. When it comes to the trust, like I said, equity is trust and contract is common law. They merged them. So there's a commingling of jurisdictions that causes all kinds of confusion. The next
So
one
Keith,
go
so
ahead.
listen, does that come in where so that's where you can use that maxim about I can't think of it right over the head, something about fraud and equity. Equity can't be used
Oh,
for something.
yeah, equity does not allow a statute to be used to cloak for fraud.
Exactly.
The next one we have is the misprision of felony that I spoke of the other day. It says, whoever, having knowledge of the actual commission of a felony, cognizable by a court of the United States. And that's what we're talking about in every case when they violate the beneficiary. It is a felony. Conceals and does not as soon as possible make known to the same to some judge or other person of civil or military authority under the United States shall be fined under this title or prison not more than 3 years or both. And again, that's because those contracts that these public officials follow are a trickle down from the United States itself, which itself, the Constitution, is a trickle down from the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union under the Global Postal Trust Services. So it's actually a violation of international trust. The next one is 18 U.S.C. 551. Is that one showing? Okay, 18 U.S.C. 551, concealing or destroying invoices or other papers. Whoever willfully conceals or destroys an invoice, book, or paper relating, relator, to any merchandise imported into the United States after an inspection thereof has been demanded by the collector of any collection district. See, that's what these districts are. They're collection districts for the acquisitions of property under 48 CFR Federal 48 CFR 52.212-5 contract terms and conditions required to implement executive orders and statutes - commercial items, commercial products. That's that equity shall not allow a statute to be used as a cloak for fraud. Whoever conceals or destroys at any time any such invoice, book, or paper for the purpose of suppressing any evidence or fraud therein shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. The next one is 1589, which is that forced labor. U.S.C. 1589, wherein it says, forced labor, whoever knowingly provides or obtains the labor or services of a person by any one of or by any combination of the following means: by means of force, threats of force, physical restraint, or threats of physical restraint to that person or another person, by means of serious harm or threats of serious harm to that person or another person, by means of the abuse or threatened abuse of law or legal process, or by means of any scheme, plan, remember the interdiction plan we spoke of yesterday, or pattern intended to cause the person to believe that if that person did not perform such labor or services, that person or another person would suffer serious harm or physical restraint. Remember, we talked about submission in the shorts. One submission means that you will submit again. So the first time they pull you over and get you for an offense and take you to those courts, that is instilling that very fear or a pattern of intended to cause the person to believe that if that person did not perform such labor or services, that you would suffer serious harm or physical restraint, being jailed again, shall be punished as provided under subsection D. Whoever violates this section shall be fined under this title and imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. If death results from a violation of this section, or if the violation includes kidnapping, an attempt to kidnap, aggravated sexual abuse or attempt to kill, the defendant shall be fined under this title and imprisoned for any term of years or life or both. So again, if you steal one of the children of the brethren of Israel and make merchandise of him by converting the last name to a firm name as an investment scheme under the court registry investment system, that is kidnapping. So anywhere from 20 to life. Got it? And that's for, in this section, the term abuse or threatened abuse of law or legal process means the use or threatened use of a law or legal process, whether administrative, civil, or criminal, in any manner or for any purpose for which the law was not designed. It was not designed to take advantage of the beneficiary by not disclosing certain information in the administrative courts proposing civil law and converting data elements to an investor. So just using the law against the beneficiary is such a thing. I urge anybody to rebut that. I urge you. I don't know that there's anybody out there that can. It is plain writing. Just like a United States business means a United States citizen. Therefore, a United States citizen means a United States business. The abuse or threatened abuse of the law means the use or threatened use of the law. The next one, 18 U.S.C. 1341 through 1351. So let's take a look at that one.
I guess it's the term, they're looking at it as the terms have been negotiated by the firms. I
Yep.
mean, the simple.
And we're just going to go through and look at the titles. 18 U.S. Code 1341 is frauds and swindles. 1832, fictitious name or address. And when you're using a legal name, that is a fictitious name with an address. And like I said, they indoctrinated us all through the public education system from the time we were 5 years old and entered school and taught us to write the legal name in a legal construct rather than the grammatically correct name of the living being. And it does not include a last name. My mom and dad gave me a name, Keith, like John said earlier, or Brian said earlier in the stream earlier today. Mom and dad gave me two given names, Keith and Orland. The other name isn't a given name. It's an attachment. And it's the father's last name, not the mother's last name.
Hey, Keith, I wanted to bring up something about that name thing. We were talking, you remember Eric? I was talking to him about why Charlie Brown suffered so bad. It's because he had a first and last name and everyone else only had a first name. And a little weird, it's kind of strange to think about that because you see him suffering so much. And then with the fictitious name, there's something I purchased a stamp because I was also talking to Eric about this, and it was about getting a stamp that says, okay, now that you've sent me something in the mail, it's a fictitious name and address. It violates these codes, but also what we were talking about is they didn't properly serve us. So when I get a speeding ticket and they give me a court ticket on the side of the road, how is that a legal notice to appear, or how and when? Is it when the officer gave me the ticket? Is that the notice? I mean, I just want to add a couple things.
Yeah, and that goes to the delegation of authority. They don't actually have the authority without checking with their superiors. They are subordinates, and this is 22 CFR 93.1. Diplomatic notice through diplomatic channels. Let me pull it up, make sure I've got that right. 22 CFR 93.1. Service through diplomatic channel. And they are not a diplomat. They are a subordinate hired under contract and they're not.
Wouldn't that be their job application or whatever their contract is, that they're working for such and such entity or business or whatever, even as a police officer?
Well, through the delegation of powers, that's the only way they can work for that entity, is because they have a superior power, and they're not going to that superior power. They think that their power is from the local level, and that's not so. Like I told the assistant DA, you have to follow federal rules. Congress makes rules for the government, and you are a governing body. The rules weren't made here locally. They were made at the international level. The United States accepted a contract at the international level and created their own constitution to indenture that, and that is a contract for public officials, the Constitution. That's why they have to take an oath to that Constitution. That's what allows them to be licensed. So let's take a look at 18 U.S. Code 1343 is fraud by wire, radio, or television. And that's what this electronic system is now. That's what we're talking about. They're transferring this information over the wire, the radio, or television. The next one, and that's as it relates to the definitive document in paper form, definitive paper document, wherein it's a legal document that is then entered into a book entry system, which converts it to the electronic data elements. The next one is bank fraud, because that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a monetary system, currency. The next one is injunctions against fraud. Now this one says, I want to read this one here a little bit. If a person is violating or about to violate this chapter in Section 287 or Section 287, 371, or 1001 of this title, that's 1001, or 18 U.S.C. 1001, misprision of felony, or not misprision of felony. I've got way too many codes in my head right now. That is statements or entries generally. My apologies. The statements or entries generally. So we have a definitive paper document that is entered into the book entry system. That's what it's talking about. Committing or about to commit a banking law violation as defined in Section 3322D of this title. And that's where I'm talking about they convert the last name to a firm name. That is a banking law violation because I am not allowed to invest if I'm not qualified. Committing or about to commit a federal health care offense. And that is the use of the Social Security number and converting it to an obligor number. That is a health care number provided by the Social Security Administration under the Health and Human Services, who is the initial importer of the record from the local county hospital. The Attorney General may commence a civil action in any federal court to enjoin such violation. This is your joinder, like we spoke about here a few days ago. If a person is alienating or disposing of property or intends to alienate or dispose of property obtained as a result of banking law violation or federal health care offense or property which is traceable to such violation, the Attorney General may commence a civil action in any federal court to enjoin such alienation or disposition of property, or for a restraining order to prohibit any person from withdrawing, transferring, removing, dissipating, or disposing of any such property or property of equivalent value. Appoint a temporary receiver to administer such restraining order. A permanent or temporary injunction or restraining order shall be granted without bond. Violating or about to violate. Entries generally. The court shall proceed as soon as practicable to the hearing and determination of such an action, and may at any time before final determination enter such a restraining order or prohibition or take such other action as is warranted to prevent a continuing or substantial injury to the United States or to any person or class of persons for whose protection the action is brought. Action is brought in the American interests for the internationally protected person known as a United States business as a United States citizen. Very simple. They're using that very classification against us, against our superior interest as American citizens versus a United States citizenship. A proceeding under this government or this section is governed by the federal rules of civil procedure, except that if an indictment has been returned against the respondent, discovery is governed by the federal rules of criminal procedure. This is where they use the federal rules of civil procedure for the contracts. And when they find a problem with that contract, an indictment can be returned. Discovery is governed by federal rules of civil or criminal procedure because now that contract has become, that contract is now a breach contract, and that proves a criminal action against the beneficiary, and that's the breach of trust. And that's why the superior trustee, the United States, has to step in, because the subordinate trustee, a co-trustee, is not following his contract with his superior. And in so doing so, he violated a beneficiary that gives the power to that superior to begin with. Articles 9 and 10 of the Constitution. Go ahead,
Now,
sister.
brother, the thing that I overstand, I was reading some information about presentments and indictments with grand juries, and they were talking about the similarity between the presentment and an indictment go through a grand jury. And so basically that is just instrumentality that has to be drafted and drawn up in order for a prosecuting attorney to be able to present to the to the judiciary, correct?
Yep. And that's why I say, you know, the Postal Service is the ultimate authority there, because that's where the judicial officer department is. It's an independent and neutral forum within the United States Postal Service. And that comprises of the judicial officer, the administrative law judge, and the Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals. You have to have a contract. If you don't have a contract, then it's none of your judicial concern. Yet that's what they're doing, is they're making it a judicial concern by confronting the beneficiary as if though he's the one that's responsible to, quote, pay through that Federal Reserve note and other obligations and securities of the United States, when that's not so. That's the obligation of the United States.
And
So
that's
this,
why it's international, because I was also doing some further research and found out that a lot of these what they call third world countries, when they get in bed with the alleged or so-called United States, they too have to draft up a constitution and follow the same international laws.
yep. And that's
Well,
why
can
I
I say
say,
something?
sure.
Can she turn her audio up a little bit more? And then secondarily, if there's a first world and a third world, where's the second one, and can we move there? Because I'm sick and tired of both of these at once.
Well, I got my volume turned up as high as I can go right now, but you
You're good.
know,
Just letting you know, I was trying to hear you earlier from a distance, and you were just a little quiet. That's all.
yeah, I know, brother, but I think it's the device that I'm on. But you know, something is gonna change, and I'm welcoming, you know, whatever the Most High presents for me moving forward. But yes, I wasn't aware of that until I realized, I didn't know myself until I did further research, and I realized the Constitution is pretty much constructed the same way as the United States. Theirs in a more parliamentary, it's written more in a parliamentary way,
Right,
if I
because
may
it's
say.
going right, because it's going through the International Parliamentary Union as a sister union of the Universal Postal Union. Now, the next one I've got is 18 U.S. Code 1346, definition of scheme or artifice to defraud. For the purpose of this chapter, the term Scheme or artifice to defraud includes a scheme or artifice to deprive another of the intangible right of honest services. Period. It's honesty and integrity. Good faith. Make sure you're doing everything honestly. The next one. Healthcare fraud, because it's all related to the Social Security number, which is the Health and Human Services Department's jurisdiction first. They're the ones that control the estate. Whoever knowingly and willfully executes or attempts to execute a scheme or artifice to defraud any healthcare benefit program or to obtain by means of false or fraudulent pretenses, representations, or promises of any of the money or property owned by or under the custody or control of any healthcare benefit program by and through the use of the Social Security number, wherein they, by means of false or fraudulent pretenses and representations, change the representation of the legal representative authorized from the last name to a firm name without disclosing it. That's fraud. The next one.
Also, in the same vein, when you're talking about, I guess, alteration, when I see my driver license, it has my last name, comma, first middle name. Right? Who and what is that? Is that for their purposes for alphabetical ordering? Again, this is, I'm just going to be rhetorical with you, but, you know, the issue I have is that that's not me. How can I don't write my name that way? And not only do I not use my full middle, you know, and last.
Right. That's a military jurisdiction. And if you go back to your school records and look at your report card, you'll see they do it the same thing. They do the same way. Little, comma, Keith Orland. Those are military schools. That's a military styling of grammar.
And isn't that why they add Mr., Mrs.,
yep.
all that too?
Yep. Those are military terms as well. Yep. So 18 U.S. Code 13.
Coins.
Yep. Securities and commodities fraud. Remember we were talking about agriculture earlier? That's where the extension of commodities come from for 17 CFR that we spoke about as well. And again, that's what they're doing. It's a commodities fraud by the terms. An absence of meaning. Whoever knowingly executes or attempts to execute a scheme or artifice to defraud any person in connection with any commodity for future delivery, or any option on a commodity for future delivery, or any security of an issuer with class of securities registered under Section 12 of the Securities Exchange Act, 15 U.S.C. 78I, or that is required to file reports under Section 15D of the Securities Exchange Act, 15 U.S.C. 78OD, or to obtain by means of false or fraudulent pretenses, representations, or promises. That's the promise to appear. Remember that citation says you promise to appear. Any money or property.
Yeah, well, and then I would hate to say most of the documentation that I get, it says if you wish to make a payment. I don't wish for it. I wish for you to go away. Like, go F yourself, you know? I wish for this to stop. So, again, these words are very strange, and I want to understand that. So when you said under fraudulent pretenses and the what were you saying about the officer?
When he gives you that citation, it says on their promise to appear.
Promise, and I'm not appearing. I'm not some ghost, right? So again, I don't appear like an apparition, you know. It's just strange.
And not only that, but pro, like I said earlier, averse to pre means prior, pro means in the future. Pre means in the past, pro means in the future. Mise, as is singular to mises, means bets. Future bets. It's a gamble. It's a big poker game. Don't poke the bear. Any money or property in connection with the purchase or sale of any commodity or future delivery, or any option on commodity for future delivery, or any security of an issuer with a class of securities, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 25 years or both. The next one, 1349, attempt and conspiracy. This is when one person goes and takes that information and gives it to another, and now they are involved together in that artifice of fraud. Any person who attempts or conspires to commit any offense under this chapter shall be subject to the same penalties as those prescribed for the offense, the commission of which was the object of the attempt or conspiracy.
And Keith, since you're an 18 U.S. code, doesn't this fall with section 241 and 242 with deprivation of rights under color of law and the other one, right? So you could use this if we're already in 1350. We've gone almost 1,100 sections ahead, and we're still talking about fraud and these people are making up codes and statutes and things that I understand aren't necessarily law, right? When the legislation body hasn't turned it into a law, then how can a code be law? So that, and it's colorable because they're calling us white, they're calling us black, and I'm trying to understand that a lot too, you know.
Absolutely, and it's important to understand those terms. Every word is some kind of term that can be used or every word is something that can be used as a term in a contract.
Well, oops, sorry. Then again, since we lack the understanding or comprehension of the terms that they're using, because if they're not adding some kind of a legend or some kind of reference, then I can say that you're using a language I can't understand, let alone speak to you in, because I don't understand how the common. See, and that's where we got into the whole discussion of when Clinton said it depends on your definition of what is. And when I understood that later, I was like, what? Okay, because it literally then you lack the understanding. So how could you knowingly get into the contract if you didn't know the terms or the conditions that you were obligated to be part of, supposedly?
Yep, and that's why I say those two little words are very important. We have UCC 3-402 that tells us the alternative giving an unambiguous authorized signature on the instrument is therefore not liable for the person named in the instrument, qualifying the fact that you are not one and the same. There is a distinct difference. Go ahead, sister.
And in these terms that they utilize, again, if you think of grammatically, they are using prepositions. You notice they use the word under, they use the word in, they use the word of, they use the word on, and so forth. And so basically, it's all tied into an accounting system with the T ledgers. And so, it's all law, accounting, it's all dealing with business transactions.
Absolutely. 18 U.S.C. 1350, failure of corporate officers to certify financial reports.
Yep. And prepositions govern nouns and pronouns.
Yep. Criminal penalties. Whoever certifies any statement as set forth in subsection A and B of this section, knowing that the periodic report accompanying the statement does not comport with all the requirements set forth in this section, shall be fined not more than $1 million or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. Willfully certifies any statement as set forth in this subsection A and B of this section, knowing that the periodic report accompanying the statement does not comport with all the requirements set forth in this section, shall be fined not more than $5 million or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. And then the last one, fraud in foreign labor contracting. Remember, we're foreign nationals. And by using that ID, we're claiming to be United States citizens running a United States business as a foreigner, without corporate documents saying so. So it's literally a violation of 18 U.S.C. 1351, just by having anyone do anything without giving them full disclosure that if you give us that last name with the social security number, we're going to convert it to a firm name as an investment in us and use that social security number as an obligor number and not as a benefit.
So basically, brother, what they're utilizing is these texts that they call the styles manuals, correct? They're
Yes.
using that to draft up their documents
Yep.
or instrumentalities, if I may say.
Absolutely. Government Publishing Office Styles Manual, known as an ALLMARK. I'll show you here after a bit. And it relates to where the signature is and where the name is on documents. Let's see here. The next one we have is 18 U.S. Code Chapter 96, Racketeer and Corrupt, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations. 18 U.S.C. 1961, 1962, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, and 68. Racketeering activity means any act or threat involving murder, kidnapping, gambling, arson, robbery, bribery, extortion. You do this or else we're going to throw you in jail. That's extortion. You either do this or this happens. That's a threat. That's extortion. Dealing in obscene material or dealing in a controlled substance or listed chemical, which is chargeable under state law and punishable by imprisonment for more than 1 year by any act which is indictable under any of the following provisions of Title 18 U.S. Code. Section 201 relating to bribery, Section 224 relating to sports bribery, Sections 471, 472, and 473 relating to counterfeiting securities. Section 659 relating to theft from interstate shipment. If the act indictable under Section 659 is felonious, Section 664 relating to embezzlement from pension and welfare funds. That's what they're doing. It's an embezzlement from pension and welfare funds. Section 891 to 894 relating to extortionate credit transactions. By failing to give us the proper informed use of credit and giving us the information that if we give them a last name and an address, that they're going to convert it to a firm name for an investment as a credit transaction in an electronic book entry system. Section 932 relating to straw purchasing as it relates to the straw man issuing and purchase, or offering and selling securities. Well, if they're selling them, then there's somebody else purchasing them. Section 933 relating to trafficking in firearms. Section 1028 relating to fraud-related activity in concern with identification documents. It is RICO. Section 1029 relating to fraud-related activity in connection with access devices. The electronic form, this thing here is an access device, and that access device is a credit device to obtain money, property, labor, or services on credit. 15 U.S.C. 1602, definition of credit card. Section 1084, relating to transmission of gambling information. Section 1341, relating to mail fraud, which is what you were talking about. We have no proper service. Section 1343, relating to wire fraud. 1344, relating to financial institution fraud. 1351, relating to fraud in foreign labor contracting. 1425, relating to procurement of citizenship or nationalization unlawfully. Section 1426, relating to the reproduction of naturalization or citizenship papers. Relating to the sale of naturalization or citizenship papers. Relating to obscene matter. Relating to obstruction of justice. 1510, relating to obstruction of criminal investigation. 1511, relating to obstruction of state or local law enforcement. 1512, relating to tampering with a witness, victim, or informant. 1513, relating to retaliation against a witness, victim, or informant. 1542, relating to false statement and application and use of passport. Relating to forgery or false use of passport. Relating to misuse of passport. Relating to fraud and misuse of visas, permits, and other documents. Identification documents. Sections 1581 to 1592, relating to peonage, slavery, and trafficking in persons. Section 1831, 1832, relating to economic espionage and theft of trade secrets. That's the copyright and trademark of the trade name that I mentioned earlier in the Espionage and Subversive Activities Act. Statement of separation. And by the way, I did get that posted in the community section in 4 parts. Go ahead, sister.
Brother, it seems like you can use this section alone to tear somebody a new asshole, right?
Absolutely, that's what I'm getting ready to do. I'm getting ready to hand this information over to the mayor, the city attorney, and the city clerk to let them know. I know here at the bottom level what they should know at the upper level, because that's who I communicate with. I'm already in communication with the FBI, Secret Service, Pentagon, all of them, FCC, IRS. I'm already, go look at the notices page on my website. You look at the notices page on my website, and you'll see all the people I'm in communication with already for a number of years. Postal Service, everything.
So, brother, I don't know which is worse, being the donkey or the ass.
Well, they're going to look like both. Section 1951, relating to interference with commerce, robbery, or extortion. 1952, relating to racketeering, relating to interstate transportation and wagering paraphernalia. That's what the security instruments are. Like I said earlier, that's a promise. A promise. Promise. That's a future bet. That's a wager. Relating to unlawful welfare fund payments. Relating to the prohibition of illegal gambling businesses. Relating to the laundering of monetary instruments. The monetary instrument fraud is the conversion of the last name to a firm name. It's a monetary instrument that was converted without my knowing, and that is laundering money. That is swindling welfare funds through me by changing or converting the information that I never knew of. Relating to engaging in monetary transactions and property derived from specified unlawful activity. It is unlawful to convert information without letting the one that you got the information from know of that conversion and its use. Section 1958, relating to use of interstate commerce facilities in the commission of murder for hire. Section 1960, relating to illegal money transmitters. 2251, 51A, and 52 and 2260, relating to sexual exploitation of children. 2312 and 2313, relating to interstate transportation of stolen motor vehicles. And 2314 and 2315, relating to interstate transportation of stolen property. That's the property. It's the intangible property that they stole from you and converted. See, it's intangible property because nobody can have it unless I give it to them, and I have to do it with thought. Okay? So by me giving it to them in thought, that's the intangible property that I give them of the last name and first name that they turn around and then convert. And then use it and that's used as a money laundering for interstate transportation and intrastate and international. See, folks, even your phone number, when you have one of these little devices here, and it's an access device, it's got a phone number on it, that's an international phone number. You can call around the world with it. Your IP address and everything, it's an international number. Those are international securities. Section 2318, and again, that's related to the global postal trust services that are securing their obligation as a nation, relating to trafficking in counterfeit labels or phono records, computer programs or computer program documentation, or packaging and copies of motion pictures or other audio-visual works. Section 20, this is what we were talking about earlier with Brian, trademarking your image. Section 2319 relating to criminal infringement of copyright. Section 2319A relating to unauthorized fixation and trafficking in sound recordings and music videos of live musical performances, relating to trafficking in goods or services bearing counterfeit marks. That's a counterfeit mark, the firm name. I never knew that. I never gave them that information. I never knew there was a firm name that I was never taught about a firm name being the first 4 digits of the last name in uppercase. Never knew it until that clerk gave me that document. Documentary evidence, material fact evidence in the document of their conversion that I never knew of, that was used to my detriment under the use and threat of use of the law or legal system, administrative, civil, or criminal. And it's a pattern of practice. 94 fucking cases. Don't tell me that's not RICO. Section 2321. Of course, I'm not going to make those accusations. Like I said earlier, I'm coming forth with indemnification. $300 million to indemnify everybody across the board will defeat their bonds. Their bonds run about $175 million. So if I double it, Revelations 18, verse 6, I'll pull that up here in a second. If I double it, then they can't complain. All they can do is give it back to me, that which is owed to me. Section 2321 relating to trafficking in certain motor vehicles or motor vehicle parts, relating to trafficking in contraband cigarettes, relating to white slave traffic, notice it doesn't say black slave. Why does it say white slave? What's the difference? We'll look into that someday too. Relating to biological weapons, relating to chemical weapons, relating to nuclear materials. C, any act which is indictable under Title 29 United States Code Section 186, dealing with restrictions on payments and loans to labor organizations. Payments and loans to labor organizations such as the district court, that is a labor organization, dealing with restrictions on payments and loans. And guess what? Those data elements were loans. Relating to embezzlement from union funds, any offense involving fraud connected with a case under Title 11, bankruptcy, which we heard about in that video from Tiffany Henyard. Let's see here. Fraud in the sale of securities or felonious manufacture, importation, receiving, concealment, buying, selling, or otherwise dealing in a controlled substance or listed chemical. Punishable under any law of the United States, any act which is indictable under Currency and Foreign Transaction Reporting Act. Why we're talking about currency, and we're going to talk about foreign country money judgments. Act which is indictable under the Immigration and Nationality Act, because that Immigration and Nationality Act provided you with a birth certificate that you could provide as evidence that you are, in fact, the original, and that everything was a derivative from you.
Keith, have you heard that term stable coin? Stable coin?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a cryptocurrency whose value is pegged. And pegged is a currency. Pegged is a policy in which a national government or central bank sets a fixed exchange rate.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about a little earlier, when the buying or selling of an instrument like that causes a double market and double price.
Yep, and that kind of goes along with all of their paperwork. Is that basically not what they're saying stable coins are?
Right.
That's what they're doing all that shit with.
Right, because you're going to stabilize it. It's no longer a floating rate. And real quick before we continue on with that section,
You
John
know what
Hart,
an NFT stands for,
non-fungible token.
right? NFT stands for
Non-
not a fucking thing. All this digital currency is not. Well, yeah, it doesn't exist though. If it's a JPEG, it can be deleted off the internet. I don't know. It's not real. So I have a
Yep.
problem with crypto because then again, you're crypt, you're dead, part of the blockchain. What are you in prison? And are you part of the cube? Are you a Borg entity? Because it's sorry.
Well, that's right. That's right in hand with this right here. Real quick, I want to welcome India Maria to the board. Greetings, sister. How you doing today? Hello. Oh, she dropped out. So anyway, it goes to John Harnack's comment here. Not sure if this ties in, but UCC 9-511C, a person remains a secured party of record until the filing of an amendment which deletes the person. And that's what I'm doing. I'm providing an amendment to the record by doing a correction. And that's that statement of separation and all the shit that I read earlier along with this stuff here. We're going to amend the record by correcting it. So let's take a look at it. UCC 9-511, secured party of record. Subsection 3, it says a person remains a secured party of record until the filing of amendment of the financing statement which deletes the person. So it's going to delete the person from the public record while you're going to put it, like I said, a private issue for private placement for indemnification purposes, not for securities. Go ahead, sister.
And so, brother, that's when my wig was blown back past day. I was able to receive through the Most High the LSTA''S, and it's a guide that these attorneys or practicing attorneys they utilize. And I really thought it was referencing like these regulations and codes through Congress, right? And then when I looked up the abbreviation for it, it says this book had its genesis in the LSTAS Handbook of Loans, Syndication, and Trading. And this was published in 2007. And these handbooks include the chapter titled Understanding the Credit Agreement.
Yep. And that's that informed use of credit I was talking about earlier. So as we continue on with number one, to finish up here, we're not going to read the other stuff except for pattern of racketeering activity. Or section 278 relating to importation of alien for immoral purpose. If the act indictable under such section of such act was committed for the purpose of financial gain. The financial gain is because it was entered in for commercial purposes. So it was committed for the purpose of financial gain, and it was the importation of an alien, a foreign national, not a domestic person, and they imported a person for domestic use from a foreigner without informing them. Pattern of racketeering activity requires at least 2 acts of racketeering activity. I got 94. Evidence of 94. All 94 cases, they converted the last name to a firm name. I never knew it until after the 93rd case. And that's one of the elements I used against him to have this failure to appear for jury duty dismissed. Yet they still sent me a letter saying that the costs were taxed to the defendant. So now we're going to hand it all over to the IRS for full settlement. $300 million. Indemnify everybody across the board. Hand over everything you owe me. One of which occurred after the effective date of this chapter, and the last of which occurred within 10 years. Excluding any period of imprisonment after the commission of a prior act of racketeering activity. We'll go ahead and read unlawful debt. It means a debt incurred or contracted in gambling activity which was in violation of the law of the United States, a state or political subdivision thereof, or which is enforceable under state or federal law in whole or in part as to principal or interest because of the laws relating to usury. It is a usufruct. And B, which incurred in connection with the business of gambling in violation of the law of the United States, a state or political subdivision thereof, or the business of lending money or a thing of value at a rate so usurious under state or federal law, where the usurious rate is at least twice the enforceable rate. That's the millage rate. Remember, I spoke the other day about mathematics and how if you take 1 penny times 1 penny, what do you get? You get 1 penny. However, if you use the decimal system and its representation of 1 penny, which is 0.01 times 0.01, you get 0.0001, which is 1,000th. Think about that, folks. So let's take a look at the next one.
Yes, brother, that's right, because it all depends on which way that decimal goes. Either go left or right can make a big difference in a value.
That's why when they say dollar for dollar, they mean dollar for dollar, not $10 for $10, not $5 for $5, not $20 for $20, not $50 for $50, not $100 for $100. It's dollar for dollar. You have to separate each unit. You can take one unit at a time. U.S. Code 395.
Brother, it just hit me. It's like when you go let's see. If you go right to the decimal point, the value gets less, and when you go left, the value gets greater. And I'm
Yep.
thinking in a sense of value, if you're valuing a righteous, that's why there's like the fork in the road. Do you go left or do you go right?
Yep. And under 6 U.S.C. 395, section C3, it says foreign incorporated entity. Foreign incorporated entity. The term foreign incorporated entity means any entity which is, or but for section B, would be treated as a foreign corporation for the purpose of Title 26. Now, I spoke about Title 26 before as it relates to 26 U.S.C. 1031, exchange of real property held for productive use or investment. Subsection H. Special rules for foreign real property. Real property located in the United States and real property located outside the United States are not of like kind. And it talks about related person, certain dispositions not taken into account, special rules for exchanges between related persons, application for certain partnerships. For purpose of this section, an interest in a partnership which has in effect a valid election under 761A to be excluded from the application of all subchapter K shall be treated as an interest in each of the assets of such partnership and not as an interest in a partnership. Basis. Let's see here. That's non-recognition of gain or loss from exchanges solely in kind. So it's an equal exchange. So there's no recognition of gain or loss. Requirement that that property be identified and that exchange be completed not more than 180 days after transfer of exchange property. This goes to the identification being certain. And this is where they're changing the identification of the property, and that would be the corporate or legal name, and they're changing it to a firm name. Gain from exchanges gain from exchanges not solely in kind. So in other words, there has to be a gain because there's an offset in value because there's a difference in kind. Loss from exchanges not solely in kind. So it bears the same fruits. One party may gain while the other party losses. That's not a fair exchange. It's not an equal exchange. This is why I say, if you're going to use the commercial system to profit, the only way you can profit in this system is off the loss of another man. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be extending credit. All credit goes to God. Go ahead, sister.
And now this is why I see when they talk about United States citizen, they give them, I think, the date that the amount of days for supposedly doing business between 120 to 180 days or 83 days. When you look at what they say, your stay within the United States allegedly.
Yep. The next one I've got is 48 CFR 52.209-10. This is the Federal Acquisitions Regulations again. And this is prohibition on contracting with inverted domestic corporations. Inverted domestic corporation means a foreign incorporated entity that meets the definition of an inverted domestic corporation under 6 U.S.C. 395B, applied in accordance with the rules and definitions of 6 U.S.C. 395C. So let's go back. How come it's not giving me the Cornell one? And this is at 6 U.S. Code 395 that we just read the one definition from in Section C here. Definitions and special rules, da-da-da-da. It says, inverted domestic corporation, for purposes of this section, a foreign incorporated entity shall be treated as an inverted domestic corporation if, pursuant to a plan or a series of related transactions, the entity completes before, on, or after November 25th, 2002. Before, on, or after. So that means if the entity completes the direct or indirect acquisition of substantially all of the properties held directly or indirectly by a domestic corporation, or substantially all of the properties constituting a trade or business of a domestic corporation. So that domestic corporation is constituting a trade or business. And again, in the tax code, trade or business, the definition thereof means the performance of the functions of public office. The next one we've got is congressional findings under 15 U.S.C. 1601. Go ahead.
So basically, this domestic securities, they're taking our data elements and they're utilizing them as commodities, and we are they considering us to be the domesticated ones?
I don't know what they're considering us. All I know is that some of these people know exactly what's going on, and most of them are just entering data elements without knowing. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Educate them, and then if they continue to do that through a pattern or practice after that, now you got them by the balls. 15 U.S. Code 1601, Congressional Findings and Declaration of Purpose, and this is under Title 15, which is Monopolies and Combinations, Restraint of Trade, Federal Trade Commission, Securities and Trust Indentures, Securities Exchanges, Securities Investor Protection, all of it. Public Utility Holding Companies, Investment Companies, all of it. Statistical and Commercial Information, Trademarks, weights and measures and standard time, National Institute of Standards and Technology, da da da. It goes on and on and on. Okay? This is the trust code. This is international commerce, foreign trade and commerce. And 15 U.S.C. 1 and 3 talk about antitrust laws. So under here, 15 U.S.C. 1601, congressional purpose and declaration, or congressional findings and declaration of purpose. The Congress finds that economic stabilization, as Russ was talking about, would be enhanced, and competition among the various financial institutions and other firms engaged in the extension of consumer credit would be strengthened by the informed use of credit. The informed use of credit results from an awareness of the cost thereof by consumers. It is the purpose of this subchapter to assure a meaningful disclosure of credit terms so that the consumer will be able to compare more readily the various credit terms available to him and avoid the uninformed use of credit, and protect the consumer against inaccurate and unfair credit billing and credit card practices. A pattern of practice. Terms of personal property leases. Like I said, when I walked out of jail and they told me they wanted me to sign that release paperwork, they were wanting to release my personal services to do their paperwork. It's very easy. It's very simple. The Congress also finds that there has been a recent trend towards leasing automobiles and other durable goods for consumer use as an alternative to installment credit sales, and that these leases have been offered without adequate cost disclosures. It is the purpose of this subchapter to assure a meaningful disclosure of the terms of leases of personal property for personal, family, or household purposes so as to enable the lessee to compare more readily the various lease terms available to him, limit balloon payments in consumer leasing, enable comparison of lease terms with credit terms where appropriate, and to assure meaningful and accurate disclosures of lease terms in advertisements. There she is, Autumn. Greetings, sister. Appreciate the support. Very well appreciated. Thank you.
I find it fascinating. They asked you to release, hey, you know, this didn't work out or whatever. We held you in the cage for a month. But on the way out, you know, for good measures, you want to release that address to that office again?
Yeah, yep. It's exactly what we're talking about. So here we go with 15 U.S. Code 1681, another congressional findings and statement of purpose. Congress makes the following findings, and this is accuracy and fairness of credit reporting, and it says the banking system is dependent upon fair and accurate credit reporting. That's why we're talking about bank fraud and RICO charges. Inaccurate credit reports directly impair the efficiency of the banking system. By them inaccurately putting in the information we gave them, that's a disadvantage to us, and we are the banking system. Without us, again, just like the government, without us, they have nothing to bank. And unfair credit reporting methods undermine the public confidence, which is essential to the continued functioning of the banking system. Regulation Z. An elaborate mechanism has been developed for investigating and evaluating credit worthiness, credit standing, credit capacity, character, and general reputation of consumers. Consumer reporting agencies have assumed a vital role in assembling and evaluating consumer credit and other information on consumers. There is a need to ensure that consumer reporting agencies exercise grave responsibilities with fairness, impartiality, and a respect for the consumer's right to privacy. So, now is when we're going to talk about that birth date. Get back to my StreamYard. And there she is, La India Maria. Greetings, sister. How you doing tonight?
Greetings, Brother Keith. I'm good. How are you today?
Good. Good to have you on board.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let me pull up full screen here on everybody. And as I showed you, I've got a birth certificate here. And we're going to show you this part right here. It says date of birth. August 20th, 1966, 5:27 p.m. That is not the date of birth. That's the date I was born. The actual date of birth is the date they signed it, October 24th, 1966, and November 3rd, 1966, date received by the registrar. So they signed it on October 24th, and that's the date of birth. So when you look up your credit report and they have your actual day you were born on as your date of birth, you have to correct it. That's not the date of birth. Look on the original document, that's the day I was born. Even though it says date of birth, that is not a birth date. This documentation wasn't done immediately. It took time. It took a development of time. They had to go through certain processes from the birth clerk, which is date signed, October 24th, 1966 at the hospital, and then received at the county registrar, November 3rd, 1966. Pure and simple. So when you get a credit report and it says birth date, you correct the birth date. That's an amendment under UCC 9-511. I'm the holder in due course, and that's my credit report. And as holder in due course, I've got to amend the birth date. That deletes the person. Guess what? They can no longer come after you. They know they've got false information. It was falsified somewhere along the line. The next one. I've got a nice little site here. It says, what if we claim, this is Heather Plett. Heather Plett. What if we claim and honor sovereignty in our relationships? Up until a dozen years ago, I'd only encountered the word sovereign in reference to God, and I assumed it had something to do with being all-powerful, all-knowing, in control, and holy. I later encountered it in a relationship, or in relation to nations, but because I'd been raised with a highly tuned blasphemy detector, I wondered whether that meant those nations were trying to be as powerful as God, and whether governments had become false idols. A dozen years ago, I came across the word again when I worked in international development, and my colleagues were talking about food sovereignty. This is your ability to create your own little sovereign gardens. We even have a little project here in Waterloo for the Burmese immigrants, where the city has set aside a whole city block. And these Burmese immigrants live in this apartment building. It's almost full of nothing but Burmese immigrants. And so they had a planned project to help provide food sovereignty for themselves, so they wouldn't have to be dependent upon the community here domestically because they're foreign. That's when I became curious about what I'd missed in my earlier understanding of the word. There are three categories often used for food-related support: food aid, food security, and food sovereignty. Food aid and food security is your agriculture. Food aid is your health and human services for the homeless and needy. Food sovereignty is that you are replenishing the earth as you're instructed for your own prosperity and abundance. If you give a man a fish, food aid, he'll eat all day, or he'll eat for a day. If you teach him a man to fish, food security, he'll have food for a lifetime. But what if you put a fence around the pond and only allow him to fish on certain days and he has to go hungry in between? Ensuring he has agency over his food choices and accessibility to the sources of that food is food sovereignty. In the nonprofit world, we support food sovereignty by funding projects where people We're advocating for their right to adequate food and agricultural sources. This is why I say the inherent importance of the lesson of feeding a man a fish, or giving a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but teach him a fish and he feeds himself for a lifetime. The inherent principle there is the education, the knowing. According to Wikipedia, sovereignty is the full right and power of a governing body over itself, without any interference from outside sources or bodies. With full sovereignty, the man can fish at the pond when, if he wants, make decisions about that pond, and choose whether or not to share the pond with his neighbors. Largely, the term is associated with nations and their governments. But what if we bring that definition down to land in our own lives? How does it change your relationship with yourself and with others if you consider yourself to be sovereign and you consider those in your relationship to, or you're in relationship with, to also be sovereign? This is that image and likeness I speak about with this trespass thing. Waterloo Christian Community School, and they don't see the image and likeness. They don't believe I'm sovereign like they are. Therefore, they're going to accuse me of being a heathen. That's danger. That's a danger to the children. Basically claiming that I'm a predator of children. Fucking sick. To claim sovereignty means that I get to decide what happens to my body, heart, and mind. It means that I have agency and autonomy and am not controlled or manipulated by anyone. I get to make my own decisions and live with the consequences. I get to choose who I am in relationship with and how much space to give them in my life. Stay the fuck out of my face. Don't you dare get in my face. I can choose to end relationships that cause me harm and walk away from situations and communities that don't honor my sovereignty. If I treat you as someone who has your own sovereignty, it means that I assume you have the same right to self-govern your life as I do. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Owe no man anything but to love one another, for that is to fulfill the law. You get to tell me how you want to be treated, and I can choose to accept those boundaries or walk away. Your pronouns don't fucking matter to me. They don't fucking matter to me. My apologies, I didn't realize I wasn't showing it. It's what I teach in my work around holding space, that we offer love to each other without attachment, manipulation, control, or boundary crossing. For me, I suspect for many others, it feels quite foreign to think of myself as sovereign. I've got all kinds of old scripts running in my head telling me that it's selfish to claim the full right and power of my own governing body without any interference from outside sources or bodies. Shouldn't I be more agreeable than that? Should I be nicer? Should I accommodate other people's needs before my own? Shouldn't I extend grace to those who interfere? Shouldn't I overlook the boundary crossers if they are offering me safety, protection, resources, or employment? Aren't they entitled to certain rights if I need what they have to offer? This is in reference to the stream earlier, where they're supposed to assist us, and in that we have to assist them. In order to receive equity, you must first bring equity. If you want peace, you must come with peace. Quid pro quo. Recently, I had an opportunity to claim my sovereignty in a relationship with someone who hasn't always respected it in the past. This person was going to be in my house, and I was nervous about it because of past experiences when they would fix things without being asked to do so, judge my choices about how my house is arranged and maintained, etc. As the time approached for the visit, I realized that I could make a choice, say nothing and risk further violations, or claim my sovereignty and communicate what kind of behavior I found unacceptable in my space. That's all I'm doing. It's unacceptable for you to keep converting the information I give you anymore. And I can no longer give you certain information anymore, not simply because of that, because I'm not qualified to. I don't belong in that public forum. That's not my sovereignty. I'm sanctified and ordained a prophet unto the nations. I shed off that nationality. I delete that person by merging him with a new one. salvation, resurrection, and merger into a new name, the Keith Orland Little FBU Trust Estate. I choose the latter with a simple text. I let the person know what the ground rules would be for the visit. If they wished to comply, they were welcome, but if they didn't, they could choose not to come. They chose to comply. In essence, what I did was establish a treaty with this person. That's that armistice in Article 139 of the Libra Code. You have to give them notice of a treaty, a peace agreement. Claiming my sovereignty in the relationship and laying out the expectations for what was acceptable. A treaty is an agreement under international law entered into by actors in international law. Like I said, I'm a foreign national, and anytime one of these local yahoos confronts me, that's an international incident. Namely, sovereign states and international organizations. If we can bring the definition of sovereignty down to our own lives, perhaps we can also consider how that sovereignty is negotiated by a treaty between sovereign individuals in a relationship. The problem, as I see it, is that few of us have an embodied understanding of sovereignty because we have been socially conditioned by colonial systems. Colonization is a process by which a central system of power dominates the surrounding land and its components. Colonizers are not respecters of treaties. Remember when America was colonized, they didn't respect the treaties of the rest of the world. It wasn't until a couple hundred years later that they decided, well, we better start making some treaties because otherwise they're going to come after us. They may create them, but they either use their power to manipulate what the treaties contain, or they bulldoze over them to take the resources they want, like they did the American Indians before all this shit happened with the Declaration of Independence and everything. That's what those prior treaties were all about. They were taking advantage of the indigenous people. In a colonial system, everyone is impacted. Both the colonizers and the colonized become shaped by the imbalance of power and the lack of respect for boundaries and sovereignty. And it's been going on for a couple hundred years. Some learn to take what's not theirs, and others learn that their rights are easily violated and their resources easily taken. Most of us find ourselves somewhere at the intersections, having power in some relationships and no power in others. In a colonial system, go ahead.
And brother, now I have to go back and revisit the movie Wakanda, because in there they were calling between the indigenous people and the strangers or the visitors, the colonizer. So I now have to go back and watch that now. I yield.
Yep, absolutely. In a colonial system, nobody walks away unscathed. Nobody ends up with a well-balanced understanding of what it means to hold sovereignty as a core value in relationship. And this is the problem. This colonial system, like I said, with the public education and everything since 1840, which is the institution of the public education in America, they don't teach us about sovereignty. They don't teach us spiritual scripture and things like that. They do it under a military system of schooling that limits us in our learning so that we become subjected to the colonization and the unbalance. We don't get the equal value. We don't get the equal exchanges. And this is where it comes from. You have to understand your sovereignty and the power of the word. It's all in the language. You are not governed by these people, only by your consent. And the longer you consent to it without balancing that sovereignty, you're not going to do too well.
These people are basically, I think in lawful terms, are economic agents. And they're not here for our economy. They're here for themselves. And I believe it to be a handful of individuals from the county and the state and the federal level. And I would assume international level, because all the resources are going somewhere.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, and I mean, I find it to be just a handful of people involved in this whole, let's just say, Ponzi scheme.
Yep.
Because everything's supposed to be done in good faith, with good conscience, for good reason, for the positive of the economy in all of this. And these actors that are involved, the banking and the government officials, state, local, and federal level, they're the ones, it seems to be the ones that, now, who in today can look at anything and say, okay, what my job that I'm doing within local government or any type of government, that there's not corruption going on. They're just not going along to get along. How do you not know that at this stage in the game?
Well, yeah, and that goes to that moral turpitude. You know, if you don't have a moral standing yourself, you're actually just a no give a fuck attitude, and that's a selfish place to be. That's why I say these people are making a paycheck to go home and support their family and nothing more. I'm just doing my job, sir. I'm just doing my job. That's the problem. You're just doing your job, and you have no moral turpitude at all. You don't understand that by you doing your job and violating other people's rights, that's a violation of the law. So just doing your job to violate other people's rights, you ought to feel bad. And instead, you feel welcome and comfy because you get a paycheck to do it.
You know, it's crazy when I said something about the stable coins. It even says right there, part of what stable coins is all of this paperwork in under duress.
Yep.
And
So let me
it
finish.
seems what they've done, real quickly, it seems what they've done, because if we are the foreign nationals on the land, allegedly America, then they've taken the word sojourn, and then they've taken the word foreign and the TY in sovereignty, TY, thank you. And that's how they come up with these, these names that they want us to be afraid of utilizing.
Yep. Absolutely. It's a twisted language. So as we finish up here, as a result, we have a lot of people the world over who've grown up with warped sense of how to be in relationship with each other. We have a social construct that brings us up in insanity and confusion, both on a small scale and large scale, both in one-on-one relationships and in country-to-country or community-to-community relationships. This is the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing. The child goes and asks mom or asks dad if she can do something. Dad says no. So what she do? She goes to the left hand, mom. Mom says yeah. Uh-oh. Problem. I have an issue with that with my companion and the dogs. We cross boundaries. We downplay our own rights to boundaries. We fail to communicate our expectations of how we want to be treated. We emotionally colonize. We manipulate. We are victimized. And we run away from conflict because we haven't been adequately prepared for it. We wound each other. We wound each other, and we suffer from the wounds inflicted on us. Consequently, we face the kind of actions being challenged by the Me Too movement, Idle No More, and Black Lives Matter. And we face the resulting backlash. When colonized people rise up to claim their sovereignty, it makes those in power nervous. How do we change this? How do we decolonize ourselves and reclaim our honor and honor sovereignty in our relationships and communities? Well, it is both small scale and large scale problem, and every scale in between. So there is no one size fits all solution. We have to do the hard work of claiming our own sovereignty, and that needs to be accompanied with a lot of self-care and community care. Love thy neighbor as thyself, owing no man anything. And we have to do the hard work of dismantling our imbalanced system of power. We have to practice negotiating. Everything's a negotiable instrument. Learn how to negotiate and communicating better treaties and agreements in our personal relationships. And we have to address the ways in which the colonizers in our countries have ignored and or failed to negotiate or ratify treaties with other sovereign nations or people groups. We have to learn how to enter into conflict in more generative ways that help all parties emerge with their sovereignty intact. We have to practice having harder conversations and not running away whenever we feel attacked for violating another person's sovereignty. We have to learn how to communicate expectations and boundaries and not be offended when people communicate theirs. And we have to evolve the way we raise our children so that they will grow up with a better sense of their own sovereignty. I'm going to read this again. And we have to evolve the way we raise our children so that they will grow up with a better sense of their sovereignty. And a third time, to set it in everything, do not fail to pay attention here. And we have to evolve the way we raise our children so that they will grow up with a better sense of their own sovereignty.
So indeed, brother, we're not going through a revolution, we're going through an evolution of change.
Correct. I've begun the slow and sometimes painful work of decolonizing my relationships, and I know that I still have a long way to go. Sometimes I feel the way I did when I first started dancing, after being raised in a no dancing allowed Mennonite home. Like I'm stumbling across the room, stomping on people's toes while I try to find a rhythm that fits with the person I'm dancing with. Just like dancing isn't a natural act for someone raised with Mennonite roots, claiming sovereignty doesn't feel like a natural act for someone raised without colonial roots, or raised with colonial roots. But when we learn to dance together well, like a highly skilled pair of tango dancers, we learn to respect each other's space, honor each other's bodies, and not get in the way of each other's brilliance. We find intimacy not by violating each other's space, but by spending many hours in practice learning to negotiate the space between us. We might step on each other's toes now and then, but we commit to staying on the dance floor and trying again. When one person violates the agreements we've made, they take responsibility and we figure out how to move on. The better we become at dancing together, the closer we are to being truly free. And with that, we're going to end this stream. I still have more to go, so we'll see everybody at 9 o'clock to finish up. And anything you guys got to say on the way out, let me know.
The only thing I have to say is, brother, one has to get to know themselves, because we are not separate. We are feminine energy and masculine energy, and that's how we have to love ourselves and bring ourselves together through the Most High Creator God. I yield.
Absolutely. I agree with what Sister said there. Always appreciate the time, Keith. I'm glad to see more people getting up here and, joining you. I'll try to catch you at 10. Much love and many blessings to all.
All right. Appreciate it, guys.
I agree with her as well. Thank you for having me, Brother Keith, and I will be seeing you later on tonight.
Awesome. Appreciate everybody's support. And once again, I'd like to remind everybody, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down below in the details section for anybody that wants to share some love. And before we head out, Mike York makes a pertinent point here. So abortion is the means to produce surety bonds without the live being. And there's some kind of bond that's going to happen there, and it's a surety bond, but it's probably going to be under the mom's name. That registration at the hospital is the creation of a security instrument, and that is under a surety bond that's already in place. So in the meantime, we are out, and you guys know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back or not. That's to say I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you, and have a good night. We'll see you at 9. Bye now.